For all the emotions that it stirs up, no one is really sure how or in what form chili originated. One story holds that the dish originated from Bernal Diaz de Castillo's The True History of the Conquest of Mexico, 1568, in which the author describes how the remains of luckless conquistadors, sacrificed and butchered by the Aztecs, were boiled up with hot peppers, wild maters, and oregano. The primal chili recipe should thus begin. First, catch yourself a lean Spaniard. Oh, great. So chili started out as a cannibalistic dish. I want to back up here and explore some prehistory. Clovis humans dispersed across the continent and south into Latin America to evolve into the indigenous people we are familiar with. I do know that the horse was hunted to extinction by Clovis men 8,000 years ago in present-day New Mexico, and that maize and beans did not evolve in Mesoamerica until 9,000 BC. What did they eat for 1,000 years? Since there were no large game animals in Latin America, I looked up the diet of each civilization. I had to know what their protein source was. The civilizations of present-day Latin America were the Incan, Mayan, and Aztec. The Peruvians were one of several tribes who lived in the Andes Mountains along the western coast of South America. They cultivated maize, quinoa, potatoes, sweet potatoes, and beans. Their source of meat was the Muscovy duck and the guinea pig. They also had llamas and alpacas, but there is no evidence they were eaten. They cooked in clay pots for the flavor they added to food. The Mayans inhabited the tip of Central America and present-day Yucatan Peninsula, Belize, Guatemala, El Salvador, and Honduras. They cultivated maize, amaranth, and wild rice. Their source of meat was the ocellated turkey. They also kept stingless bees for honey. They ate corn tortillas and tamales. They also invented a drink made with cacao and chili pepper known the world over as hot chocolate. The Aztecs were a conglomeration of tribes that lived in southern Mexico and present-day Mexico City. They cultivated maize, peppers, beans, squash, chayotes, tomatoes, tomatillos, avocados, and prickly pear cactus. Their source of meat was the Mexican hairless dog. These dogs were thought to be tasty because they were never fed meat, only a steady diet of maize porridge and avocados. After the conquest, the breed nearly disappeared due to the Spanish pickling them in high quantities as food for their sailors. I imagine they had to breed a lot of these dogs because there isn't much meat on them. Another source of meat was the Mexican volcano rabbit, technically a hare that they had domesticated. The rabbit features prominently in Aztec mythology and is currently endangered. All of these civilizations practiced human sacrifice and cannibalism. However, it may have only been practiced every 12 years and would have been a means of population control no matter how it was justified. I don't know how long ritual cannibalism was practiced, but it may have only lasted for a little over a millennia. Pulque has been drunk for at least 1,000 years, and its origins are the subject of various stories and myths. Most involve Mayahuel, the goddess of the maguey. It was thought that the sap collecting in the center of the plant was her blood. The Sinchantanoctin, meaning 400 rabbits, are the children of Mayahuel. They represent the drink's effects. Mayahuel may also have domesticated the rabbits. Pedicatl, the god of medicine and surgery, discovered how to make pulque. Pulque is a fermented beverage that was consumed by the Aztecs. It naturally ferments in the stalk. Further processing makes it more alcoholic. It turns rancid quickly, so it has to be consumed immediately after it is made. It takes a maguey plant 12 years to mature enough to produce the sap for pulque. It was therefore considered sacred, and its use was limited to the nobility and religious ceremonies. It was drunk by priests and sacrificial victims to increase the priest's enthusiasm and to ease the suffering of the victim. This reminds me of Jim Jones' death cult. Don't drink the Kool-Aid, y'all. The victims were laid over a narrow stone slab and their upper torso was pulled back so the abdominal cavity was at a 30-degree angle. The ceremonial knife blades were short and not exactly surgical instruments. The priest stabbed the victim and cut through the abdomen, reached inside the chest, and pulled out a beating heart all in a matter of seconds. According to History.com, the Aztecs likely practiced ritual cannibalism. The rationale for Aztec human sacrifice was a matter of survival. According to Aztec cosmology, the sun god was waging a constant war against darkness, and if the darkness won, the world would end. To keep the sun moving across the sky and preserve their very lives, the Aztecs had to feed the sun god with human hearts and blood. DNA tests of recovered victims from the Templo Mayor site showed that the vast majority of those sacrificed were outsiders such as enemy soldiers or slaves. As hard as it is to imagine, captured soldiers, slaves, and Aztec citizens went willingly to the sacrificial altar. To give your heart to the sun god was an honor and a guaranteed ticket to the afterlife, fighting in the sun god's army against the forces of darkness. It is believed that the victims' headless bodies were gifted to noblemen. 16th century illustrations depict body parts being cooked in large pots, and archaeologists have identified butcher marks on the bones of human remains in Aztec sites around Mexico City. Consuming the flesh of a person offered to the gods was like communing with the gods themselves. As off-putting as it sounds, cannibalism would have been considered not only normal but a great honor. An alternative hypothesis attributes chili to Spain via channeling. In the 17th century, the story goes, a nun named Sister Mary of Agreda was transported by angels from her Spanish convent to western Texas while in a trance. There she brought the word of God to the Hamano Indians and in exchange picked up a recipe for chili which consisted of venison, onions, maters, and chili peppers. Alternatively, chili may have been a brainstorm of displaced Canary Islanders sent to what is now San Antonio in 1730 by order of King Philip V of Spain. Cowboy historians opt for the chuck wagon cooks on the cattle trails. It is believed that the first chili was an early 19th century form of trail food that consisted of dried beef, fat, and chili peppers pounded together and shaped into packable chili bricks that could be reconstituted in boiling water over a campfire. De Goyler called this the pemmican of the Southwest. The Schwab's Company in Oklahoma has been making these bricks for over 100 years. Others cite the lavanderas, or washerwomen, who followed the Mexican army in the 1830s and 40s as the first chili makers. These women warmed their pots over mesquite fires beside wagons and sold chili to passers-by in the city's military square. Visitors were delighted with them, though author Stephen Crane commented that their food tasted like pounded fire brick from Hades. Their spicy beef and chili pepper stews may have influenced the menus of the late 19th century chili queens for whom San Antonio later became famous. William Sidney Porter, writing under the pseudonym O. Henry, visited San Antonio in the 1880s. He wrote The Enchanted Kiss about the chili queens, featuring a sinister conquistador who had been kept alive for 400 years on chili gruesomely concocted from the flesh of a senorita. It was published in the Metropolitan magazine in 1904. Outlaws Frank and Jesse James are said to have spared the bank in McKinney, Texas, home of their favorite chili parlor. Chili and tamale wagons first rolled past the Red River into Oklahoma shortly after the land run of 1889. The earliest mention of them appears in an 1897 pamphlet written by an Edmond resident discussing the cosmopolitan nature of Oklahoma Territory. The dish was popularized by the San Antonio chili stand at the 1893 Chicago World's Fair, and it quickly spread across the country. One of the earliest printed recipes for chili is found in the 1896 Manual for Army Cooks and was designed for an individual mess kit. A 1903 Afghan Indian Territory cookbook included a chili soup recipe calling for meat, chili peppers, and cumin. The recipe included beans, but the base was a Texas traditional mixture. Y'all, cumin comes from the Middle East and India. It does not belong in traditional chili. But one thing I can say is that beans are traditional for Oklahoma chili. It started in Oklahoma. Ike's Chili Parlor was opened in Tulsa in 1908 by Ike Johnson and today serves chili made from the same secret recipe by the bowl or over spaghetti or tamales. Will Rogers arrived late to give a speech in the banquet hall at the Mayo Hotel in Tulsa and is quoted as saying, "I can always eat chicken, but I can't always eat at Ike's." Will Rogers, who claimed to judge a town by the quality of its chili, gave the prize to Coleman, Texas. The town's spicy concoction featured calf fries. Rogers referred to it as a bowl of blessedness. He also said that any man who likes chili can't be all bad. In Cincinnati, chili comes with spaghetti. Known as five-way chili, this dish was reportedly invented in the 1920s by Joe and Tom Kirajeff, who served their customers quintuple-layered plates of spaghetti, chili, beans, chopped onions, and grated cheddar cheese. Food writers dubbed this one of America's quintessential meals, but a less friendly critic calls it a Z-grade atrocity, adding, "Don't let your loved ones eat it. Turn away from the darkness and toward the deep dish pizza." Texans trace Frito pie back to the 1930s, claiming San Antonio resident and chili queen Daisy Dillon dreamed up the dish. She's the mother of Charles Elmer Dillon, the guy who invented Fritos. By the 1940s, tomatoes were a common ingredient. Tomatoes, like beans, have no place in chili, according to traditional chili purists. Putting tomatoes in chili is the equivalent of dousing raw oysters with chocolate sauce, sputtered one Texas journalist. You know, I can't prove it, but I'm willing to bet tomatoes were started in Oklahoma too. Most food historians and chili experts agree that chili likely originated in Texas. Some Mexicans are more than ready to concur. A Mexican dictionary in 1959 defined chili con carne as a detestable food falsely called Mexican sold in the United States from Texas to New York. Now, who in the hell calls chili detestable? That must have been written by a damn Yankee. Lyndon B. Johnson swore by the chili of his home state. He once said chili concocted outside of Texas is usually a weak apologetic imitation of the real thing. This led to such a national flurry of recipe requests that Lady Bird Johnson had cards printed with directions for making the president's favorite Pedernales River chili, named for the river near their Texas ranch. Her recipe states that chili should be cooked in a cast iron pot. I think that's the real secret to the best taste in chili. I believe the primitive version would have been cooked in a stoneware pot. Others argue that chili may be far older than the chili queens. Rudy Valdez, a member of the Ute Indian tribe, won the World Chili Championship in 1976 with a native recipe that he claimed dated back 200 years. The original recipe, according to Valdez, was made with horse meat or venison, chili peppers, and cornmeal, and no beans. The horse became extinct on the American continent 8,000 years ago and did not reappear until the arrival of Cortez in 1519. Any recipe using horse meat can only be 500 years old, unless early nomadic hunter-gatherers pounded wild peppers and added the powder to boiled horse meat to make it palatable. The Spanish brought horses, cattle, pigs, and sheep to the New World. Only the horse, however, became wild enough that it spread across the continent and was quickly accepted by Native Americans as a companion, a beast of burden, and for some southwestern tribes as a food source during times of famine. There is no evidence to suggest that modern Mexicans ever ate horse meat after Spanish arrival. Texas made beanless chili its official state dish in 1977. 3 years after the release of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. I'm surprised anyone in Texas would eat chili again after watching that movie. Now I understand where they got the idea of using human meat for chili. Y'all don't eat the chili down there. You never know who you might be eating. Just kidding. A restaurant survey in 1989 concluded chili was one of Oklahoma's 3 most popular dishes, along with chicken fried steak and barbecue. The International Chili Society, in the spirit of live and let live, has come around on beans. As of 2012, beans are a permissible ingredient for chili in the annual World Championship Chili Cook-Off. Many cooks have moved far beyond the traditional ingredients of beef, chili peppers, and maybe beans. Chili has been made with everything from venison to buffalo, goat, skunk, jackrabbit, rattlesnake, pork, chicken, and hot sausage. Outback chili is made with kangaroo, Alaskans use moose meat, Norwegians use reindeer. Hornadillo or armadillo chili is made from the chopped meat of an armadillo and served in the shell. I didn't find a photo of this, but I did find the recipe. I also found an armadillo roasted and served in the shell, which is popular in Argentina. I think that's where the idea of eating armadillo migrated into Texas from. In South Texas, they're called Hoover Hogs. They have armadillo festivals down there where everyone eats Hoover Hog barbecue and chili. You damn South Texans will eat anything. Other non-traditional chili ingredients include peanuts, chocolate, sherry, blackstrap molasses, raisins, tequila, moonshine, ginger ale, bamboo shoots, artichoke hearts, eggplant, tofu, and zucchini. Now, who in the hell does this to chili? Whatever recipe chili fans favor, they're likely to be unreasonably devoted to it. To the credit of the chili factions, however, none has so far attempted to ban non-traditional ingredients by law, which puts them one up above the chowder people.